Hello everyone, and welcome back to Our Eyes on Indie. My name is Finn, and it is my absolute pleasure to bring you our review of Cross Blitz, a new roguelike card game that has come out just recently here, and it's interesting. It feels a lot like Hearthstone and Legends of Runeterra, but if it was more on the single player side of things, much like both of those games already have versions of, but with its own roguelike progression system more similar to Legends of Runeterra's, as well as a story mode separate from the roguelike mode with its own progression system and its own things to mess with. It's an interesting one. It is developed by Taco Boy Studios, published by the Arcade Crew and Gamera Games, and currently it is something that I've been playing quite a bit, and I have some thoughts on it here. So, without further ado, let's get into the review. So, in Cross Blitz, you're going to be playing as the captain of a mercenary team, pirate team, whatever you want to call it. Everything's very pirate themed, which is a lot of fun. And you're going to be either playing in the roguelike mode, which is called Tusk Tales, or you're going to play in the Fables mode, which is more like an actual story with different chapters. So, real quick, let's go ahead and dive into what the story mode is. The Fables mode is all about you pick a character. You're going to have two off the bat. I went with Redcroft to start things off. And then you're going to get some story, get some dialogue, and then you're going to be dropped into a map. On these maps, you're going to have different nodes that you walk to on these paths, and these paths are going to then open more paths by completing those nodes, and you're going to go to all these different places until you fight the final boss of the chapter, in which case the chapter is complete, and then you can move on to the next one. While you're doing all these battles and things, you're going to be making progress. You're going to be adding new cards to your collection that you can then put in your deck. You're going to level up your main character, and that's going to let you put some points into the little skill trees. There are 4 skill trees available on the character. They're pretty simple. They just go up in a straight line, and they give you some new cards, increase your max health, and give you a blitz, which is something we'll come back to a bit later. And this little progression, it's great. I love it a lot. It feels like, okay, what if we took the overall card collecting that you do in Hearthstone or Legends of Runeterra, and we actually put it in this game in this specific mode. And that's what it feels like, because I'm making this collection of cards. I can swap out the cards in my deck whenever I want. I can make multiple decks for any kind of situation that I might be up against. And you can even respec your skill tree at any time if you decide, hey, I actually want to try out a different kind of deck. Redcroft, for example, one thing that he has is, since he's all pirate themed, you can go for cannon build, you can go for a bomb build. Cannons are all about whenever you play a pirate minion, it's going to trigger that cannon to fire at an enemy minion, dealing a little bit of damage, and then, well, helping clear the board a bit. But you could also do the bomb one, where instead of worrying about cannons whenever you play certain cards or do certain things, you're going to plant bombs in your opponent's deck. And bombs work similar, well, actually exactly the same as they do in Hearthstone. If you remember Bomb Warrior back when that was the meta, it's the same concept. A bomb gets drawn, it immediately does some damage to the enemy hero. It's as simple as that. But being able to swap back and forth throughout the Fables mode is fantastic. It makes it so that, okay, maybe if you happen to run into an enemy that your deck's not good against, you don't have to worry about, okay, I gotta go and grind and do this. No, you're set off the bat, you can go and get whatever the heck you need and just be good to go. Now, as you're going to go through these maps, I just want to point out, because, you know, we talk about art in these reviews. The art is awesome. It's this great pixel art style. It's very clean. Everything's super clear, whether it's just on the map itself, where I can tell exactly where the paths are, and I know where I can go, where I can't go, all these things. And just the little animations on the map, I want to point out, I love them so much. Whenever your character jumps up a ladder or something and all the tiles kind of do a little bounce wave thing, it's just a nice little touch that adds so much character to the game for me. Now, when it comes to the actual card battling, right, in terms of how things look there, the cards will look great. I love the art of the characters on the spells and the minions. I think the little mercenary portraits are good. Now, I will say most of your opponents are not going to be super animated like your mercenary is, because most of them are just art from some of the cards. That's totally fine with me. It makes it easier. They don't have to make all these new assets and things, so it's just a little design thing that doesn't make a big difference. It would be cool to have proper animations for them, but it's nothing that makes me go, ugh, that feels cheap. I like it all the same. And like I said before, everything's very clear. I can tell, okay, if this minion has this or that or what have you, I'm always able to look at the board and tell you exactly what's going on at any given point in time. So let's go ahead and talk about that gameplay real quick, and then we'll swap over to the Tusk Tales and talk about how that all works. So, like I said, this is a card game very similar to Hearthstone and Legends of Runeterra, because what you're going to do is you're going to start with 1 mana, and you'll go up to a full bank of 10 by the 10th turn. So just like Hearthstone, when you go second, you are actually going to be given a gem that counts as a bonus mana that you can spend whenever you would like as a +1 mana. So you could play a 2-cost card on turn 1, or maybe a 3-cost card on turn 2. It all depends on when you would like to use it. You then have a grid that is in front of you. You have 2 rows of 4 that are going to be on each side of the field. Minions in the front will be the ones that take damage first while blocking, and then minions in the back will, of course, be after that. There are also some cards that affect certain rows or columns depending on things, and so that's a very important part to keep in mind. For example, there is a 2-cost card that has Plunder, and Plunder is whenever it kills another minion, it deals damage to the other minions in that same column. So that's something you have to keep in mind is, okay, if I put this here and this minion's going to attack this one, and if it kills my minion, it'll deal damage to the minion I had in the back row, so maybe I don't want to put him in that row, I should actually put him in this row. Or there was another card that I had that made it so when I played it, it would fill my entire front row with doomed crewmates. So obviously I want to play that in the back row so I can get extra minions on the board to do a little bit of soaking, because they're just some 1/1s. So it's all those little things like that that make this game engaging and tactical. And while all of this is going to feel very familiar, especially to people that play Hearthstone, it's still fun. Yes, you have all the same things here. You've got Battle Cry, which is just when played. You've got Death Rattles, which are just death in this. You have Spell Surge, which is called Riff in this, which I think is a fun name with it, to be honest with you. You've got all these simple things, but you also have some different mechanics like banking. Banking is an interesting mechanic that I haven't gotten to play around with, at least in the early hours. I got to later on as I started to finally get some things that I could work with and actually gave me Glimmer. It makes it so you bank Glimmer, and Glimmer is a gold currency that you can spend to buff certain cards that work with the Glimmer mechanic. For example, sometimes it's like, okay, let's give this minion Rush, or a +2/+2 if you spend this much Glimmer. But Glimmer also goes away when you get hit. Now, the one thing that I thought was kind of weird and I think deserves a change for balancing is Glimmer also kind of acts as armor. And it's weird because it seems like sometimes the hero just doesn't take damage when they have Glimmer as if it's armor, and I don't know if that's supposed to be like that, but it feels weird that that would be the case. I don't really understand why. I feel like that should just be another resource, and you lose it when you take damage is fine, especially because there's a card that actually does things if you lose Glimmer when you take damage, which I think is good. But overall, it's pretty simple. Instead of you deciding, okay, this minion's going to attack this minion, it's a lot more like Runeterra, where minions across from each other are going to hit each other. If it's empty, you'll hit the enemy hero. Now, there's a little bit of strategy here with, like I said earlier, okay, my front row gets hit first, my back row will then be hit second. And enemies in this do the same thing that you see in every other card game ever, where, hey, they hit each other, they both deal the damage unless they have the specific keyword called Swift Strike in this, where their damage gets dealt first. So, keep that in mind, your minions will hit each other simultaneously and then die. And health carries over, so it's not like Magic the Gathering where everything just heals back up after every turn. So, those are some important things to note with combat. There are also spells. They range from helping you draw more cards, dealing some damage, maybe putting more cards in your hand. They run your typical gambit of card game spells. They're all fun to mess with. The game really encourages you to do a lot of minion-based stuff off the bat, but later on you'll be able to start doing more spell-based decks as things go on. So, with the game encouraging you to play this minion style that the whole game is really focused around, it's really interesting to then swap over and play these spell-based decks, which is a good thing. It's kind of like when you start off playing Hearthstone, and let's say your friend encourages you to play Face Hunter. That's what I do to a lot of people that are getting into Hearthstone. It's more minion-based, right? You're not playing super complicated combos or anything like that, but as you get better and understand the game, you start to do things like, for example, playing Rogue or Shaman, where you really have to think things through and go a step further. And so when it comes to that, Cross Blitz does a great job at that with easing you in with an easier style of deck with pirates and then encouraging you to try out new things. So as you continue to go through the game, get better at it, it's going to actually be more fun and more complicated as you continue to grow. Now, we've talked about how the game works, right? Get your opponent down to 0, don't die yourself, mana, cards, all that good stuff. Let's talk about Tusk Tales real quick. Because here's the thing. Tusk Tales is the mode that I think most people are going to be drawn to at this. Don't get me wrong, I like Fables and I like that progression system and shopping and getting all these things as I go throughout a run, but Tusk Tales is the thing you're going to come back to over and over and over again, being the roguelike mode. And so, this roguelike mode, I enjoy a lot. I have heard some people complaining about it, and we will talk about that. But let's go ahead and explain what it is. What Tusk Tales is first off, you're going to start by picking your mercenary. You start off with 1, and then you can get more with the meta progression currency. So then you're going to dive into a map. There are different regions on the map, and each region has a few different bosses that you can face, and those bosses have a normal mode and a hard mode, as well as being able to put on modifiers if you want to go through again and set up more of a challenge. And that's great. I love that replayability of being able to go through again and be like, okay, I'm going to add this modifier where, okay, now I've got to worry about this, or oh, there's armor or a little bit more health or what have you. It's like Dome Keeper for me. I love Dome Keeper and playing Dome Keeper a whole bunch and then putting mods on it where it's like, okay, now I have to deal with this or that. Is a lot of fun to me, and Cross Blitz has that same draw where I'm good with playing it again with just some modifiers because I can also try out a new deck. Because when you get started, you're going to be on a Slay the Spire-esque map. And you're going to go through, you're going to pick the nodes you want to go to. Certain nodes will let you go to other nodes and so on and so forth. But early on, you pick a second mercenary to join your crew. The second mercenary is going to add a second type of faction to your available options of cards. With each mercenary having a different faction and then being able to pick a second one, it adds a lot of, okay, how do I want to build this? And I remember, I believe it was my second run, where the first run I had just gone full in on pirates, and the second run I decided to mess with the rift mechanic and dealing with some dragons. And I was like, okay, let's try some spells. Let's see how this goes. And so it's a weird mix of, okay, I'm encouraged with a lot of cards to pick 2 mercenaries that fall under the same kind of category, but also mixing up and picking things that are totally different and feel like they wouldn't work can work if you build your deck around it and understand where your synergies lie. So this is a game where you're going to have to understand how card games work if you really want to get crazy with your experimentation decks, and I think that's a good thing. I don't think every game needs to cater and pander towards new players, because if you do that, it's going to get old a bit fast, and Cross Blitz has the depth there of where I can challenge myself with trying things that feel like they shouldn't have synergy and finding it there. So, with that in mind, you're going to continue throughout a run. You're going to run into battles, of course. You're going to have landmarks, and landmarks have different options on them, and those options tend to range from, here's a shop, maybe you get an item, you lose some health to do this. But some of the options will be locked because they are dependent on your mercenaries that you have. Each of the mercenaries has a couple of different characteristics, and those characteristics coincide with different decisions you can make on those landmarks. So when those times come, you go, okay, cool, this character lets me do this. And while it's not super complicated and you can't really plan ahead and be like, oh, that means I want this character to do this, unless you've memorized what needs what, Well, it's still fun, and it adds some character to the fact that you're an adventuring party going through to fate on this boss. Now, with that said, there are a couple of other ways to upgrade yourself during a run and even during Fables mode that I'd like to talk about. And those are relics and trinkets. Relics are passive things that you equip to your main mercenary. You can have up to 4 of them at a time. And they range from making it so your 1-cost cards now have fleeting so they die after attacking, but they also have rush so they can attack right away without summoning sickness. Or perhaps all of the cards in your starting hand that are minions have some extra attack power. It's simple things like that, and they're great. I love them. Or one that was really interesting and made me go, I better try a different build that would work with that relic was all pirate minions cost 1 more. And that appeared while I was running a pirate deck, so obviously I didn't really want it because it would just make my life harder. But if I'm going up against a lot of pirate enemies, it's going to be a great boon to my whole strategy. And I was later on, as I played a golem-based deck, able to use that to a more effective nature, and it's really, really nice and satisfying when that happens. So you go through a run, you're going to run into landmarks, and you're going to have trinkets. Trinkets are little equipment that you put on cards themselves. Each card can have up to 3, and it is equipped across all copies of that card in your deck. So, one that I really liked is the ability to give some extra health to some minions that, okay, yeah, they're really great on attack, but they die in 1 hit, so if there's anything blocking, they just kind of fall flat. But if I give them 1 extra health, that lets them survive that initial 1 point damage and continue going a little bit further. Or it's adding thorns to cards, which makes it so when they're defending, they deal more damage. Or whenever I cast this spell, I also draw a card. And these things are nice, and they let you really upgrade and enhance your deck, either pour in and make something better at the thing it's already great at, or maybe find some weaknesses and figure out how to smooth them out and make it so that card is better all around. And it's a lot of fun to do, and the fact that every single card in your deck can have up to 3 means that you can actually get a lot and get going with it. Now, keep in mind, enemies you come up against in Tusk Tales and in Fables can have relics equipped on them. In Fables and in Tusk Tales, you're thankfully able to see beforehand what that relic is and what it does, so it's pretty nice to be able to plan around that. But sometimes they'll have trinkets on their cards as well, and that's not something you can see going in. It's something you have to figure out as the fight goes on, and all of a sudden you see, hey, wait a second, that card has a barrier when it normally doesn't? And then you're able to go, okay, now I know for the rest of this fight, that card's got barrier, gotta watch out for that. So it's just something to keep in mind that you're going to run into these things that are going to spice up and make it so you can't just sit back and take it easy the whole time. And I enjoy that. I saw a bunch of people on Steam complaining about the balancing in this game. I have not run into any super balancing issues where I felt like I could not beat an opponent. Like, yes, sometimes it's like, oh man, I just drew terribly. But it was just card game for me. It was nothing of me going, that seemed kind of unfair. But hey, maybe that's just me. Now, when it comes to the meta progression in Tusk Tales, you are going to get your meta currency. That's a purple thing that I can't remember the name of off the top of my head, because it's a kind of weird name that I thought was something else at first. But you're going to take these and you're going to level up your mercenaries or purchase new mercenaries. Now, each mercenary costs a whopping 1,000 of these to start off with, but it's definitely worth getting them because each of the areas in the game, I forgot to talk about this too, has their own criteria to fully complete the area. If you fully complete the area, that lets you unlock the next one, and so on and so forth. So you want different mercenaries because some of them require you to beat the boss with a certain kind of mercenary, and that's cool. I like that. I love that encouragement to play with a new mercenary with a new starting deck, so that feels different, and I can be like, yes, this is what I'm talking about. This is this whole replayability of different things. Now, the other thing, like I said, is leveling up those mercenaries, and there are 4 different categories for leveling up those mercenaries. You can upgrade their maximum health, which also, want to point out, this is something nice. You heal a bit of health after every fight, which is not something you get in every roguelike, and it makes it not feel like a big issue in a game where it's easy to take damage every fight, and I love that. It's nice. It reminds me of how Slay the Spire, there were times where I'd be like, man, it's just impossible for me to not take damage here, and that can feel pretty crappy at times. So I like being able to have that little bit of healing. But like I said, you can upgrade your max health for your character a whole bunch of times. That's the one that you're able to pour into the most. You're also able to get new starting cards to your deck. These starting cards are going to be in line with the other cards that mercenary already starts out with. And you know what? It's nice. I like having it so I have a larger starting deck with these better cards and these things that synergize a bit better, because then later on in a run I can skip more cards because I'm like, hey, you know what? I've actually already got something that takes care of this issue in my deck, and that's nice. Next, you can upgrade the amount of relics you can equip, because you only start out with the ability to equip 1 relic, and you can upgrade up to 4, as I said before. The final thing you are able to upgrade once your mercenary hits level 10 is getting their Blitz. Blitz is a special mechanic that is unique to each mercenary. What it is it's a card that sits on the bottom left side under your mana bar, and it has a criteria. Starting off, we'll talk about Brass. Brass is a cannon barrage. And how this works with his, well, it's called Pirate Barrage. There's a cannon one too, so let me specify that. But you have to play 8 pirate minions. Once you play 8 pirate minions, you're able to activate his Blitz. When you activate the Blitz, it deals damage to all enemies based on the amount of pirate minions you have on the board, and so it rewards you for playing a zoo style with the pirate minions. And it's a lot of fun having this little objective to complete, much like quests in Hearthstone. Back when those were meta, they kind of fell out. Do I still miss them? Absolutely. But it's in that same category where it's like, okay, I just get this certain thing, and then it lets me do this powerful thing, and that's really great. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it so much. Bosses are challenging, but I've never personally felt like it's been unfair to me. It's just all about deck building and understanding, okay, what am I going up against with this final boss? What do I need to take care of it? So, with all that said, Cross Blitz, ladies and gentlemen, is it worth your time at the price of $20? I absolutely think it is. It's in early access, it's going to be updated, which means any balancing issues you might have are going to most likely be fixed during that time. New mercenaries are going to be added. There are a whole bunch of empty slots on that roster I've yet to be able to see. And so I'm excited to see what they do, how they're stylized, what new cards can be added, maybe some new factions, some new keywords. There are a whole lot of things in there that could be done. I'm just saying, especially with the amount of new keywords that Hearthstone and Legends of Runeterra introduce all the time, there's got to be a whole lot in store for Cross Blitz. So, again, this is a roguelike that I am keeping my eye on. I'm going to be playing it a whole bunch, and I'm excited to see where it goes. And if you're excited to see where it goes, go ahead and hit that like button, because you know what? I'll be covering more Cross Blitz as it gets major updates and goes along. And if you want to keep up to date with those, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And now, the year is coming to an end, so let's see what 2023 closes out with as far as indies go. I cannot wait to see it all. But until next time, my name is Finn. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week, and we'll be here with our eyes on indie.